Sponsored by Paradigm Lost. Affordable gaming accessories with a twist.
The legend tells of 3 mystic crystals fated with lack of knowledge. Only the 3 mages, Professor Dex from Phoenix, D20 from Cleveland, and Lore from the Forgotten Realms, have the knowledge to replenish these crystals. This is the DM Toolbox, Tales from the Edge. Hello, what's up to all of our character sheets? Welcome back. It's another round of sound coming from the edge. Don't forget who we are. We're your hosts. It is I, D20, and to my left,
Lore.
And Professor Dex. And today's episode is called Once Upon a Time, How to Build a Story.
Now don't get it confused with the TV show.
No, this ain't Disney.
Because we ain't talking about that.
It hasn't been Disney since like episode 1.
I know what you're saying. Okay.
I'm just saying.
I know.
I'm just saying. You know.
Well, all right. Well, we got a really interesting podcast for you today. You know, we've gone
episode. The whole thing is the podcast. The Professor.
I've been corrected.
You know what though? That's actually coincided with one of the things we're talking about.
Really?
Because the difference between a module and a campaign. Just like the difference between a podcast and an episode. Multiple episodes make up a podcast. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So that's man, you already in the ballroom.
Yep. We're already on topic. Hell yeah. All right, yeah, we've got an interesting episode for you today. We set up like what games are, what DMing is, what the table is, what your players do. We've gone through it all. So let's get to the real meat and potatoes of what role-playing games are. They're a story.
Tatars? Precious? No. A story?
Boil them, mash them, stick them in stew.
Whoa.
Potatoes.
So when it comes to D&D, well, role-playing in general, a lot of people talk about how they have pre-written modules that they use to get ideas based off of. The system I'm most in tune with right now is D&D, especially 5th edition, where they have a whole set of published campaign books.
What is a campaign book?
So a campaign book it's both the setting, like the world setting, as well as set chapters where you have certain things to do. The older ones had like a whole story written out in chapters. So it's like chapter 1, this is what they're going to do. Chapter 2 is what they're going to do. As it progressed later, now the chapters are more split up into here's this area, here's this area, here's this area, here's all the information you need about the area, all the NPCs that live there, things that the players can do, but whatever story you're going to tell, there's a main story that's driving the whole thing, but the thing is every place that they go to, they can do something different. It's not super set in stone.
So, in other RPG games other than in D&D, sometimes they might also include unique mechanics for the game. GURPS does this. I think Strange Worlds does this. Not Strange Worlds.
Savage Worlds?
Savage Worlds, sorry about that. Savage Worlds does this, and a few other... So I know like Savage Worlds has some fan-made campaigns that were like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and other kinds of weird stuff like that.
Yeah, I played one where it's called something University, and it's like Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets college. Buffy the Vampire Slayer goes to college.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's actually another distinction we should make here is that you will have kind of open source, kind of crowd created modules and campaigns. And then you have official published modules and campaigns. Yep. And in fact, shout out to GUI Cube, which is a 5e world. It comes with its own campaigns and modules. It even has like unique like classes and class abilities and stuff, and that's kind of what I'm saying. Is like sometimes you might have different mechanics.
All I hear is shameless plug, shameless plug.
Hey,
shameless plug.
I don't benefit very much.
But it's interesting that you're talking about these modules that are crowdfunded, because from my experience as a DM, I've been DMing mostly at a local store running Adventures League, which is the standardized version of D&D and all this stuff, and there's more rules than anyone ever wants to fucking know. You have to follow them, and you have to do it in this order, otherwise your character is illegal and you can't play it, blah blah blah. Who cares? I'm done with it. But Adventures League actually had crowd-made and sort of published on online media modules that you were able to run in a specific season that followed the campaign book that had already been published and released to the public. Yeah. And so, like, one of my favorite campaign books for 5th edition is Curse of Strahd. You have the Curse of Strahd story and the setting in Barovia, and then the Adventures League modules were in the same area, but they introduced locations that don't exist in the books. They introduced characters that don't exist in the books, and a really convoluted storyline that I hated. It was the worst. Parts of our world are gone, and now you have to go figure out what happened to them. Oh, they got sent to this place. Oh, you didn't kill Strahd, but you saved the world? Good job. I'm like, what? That's not the campaign. Fuck you. But some of the modules that I did run when I was first DMing were actually pretty well written, and they're good for like one-shots. They're not really... I don't want to run them as a whole campaign because that's boring. Really boring. But that's... So, when coming from me, from a newer DM, whenever someone says module, my first thing is these really crappily written stories from people from the community, not from Wizards of the Coast or Paizo, whoever does Pathfinder, Paizo, or whoever does GURPS, or whoever does Savage Worlds, anything like that. It's crowd-made stories that then go through whoever at the company and then just get published for like $5 a pop.
Yep. Oftentimes, you will be writing your own stuff and someone gets a sniff of it and they're like, oh, write for me. That's actually 99% of the time how you get writing gigs for role-playing games. Like Wizards of the Coast, they hire mostly freelancers. They don't have a team of writers unless it's something like, okay, we're going to do Curse of Strahd and we're going to get... we're going to build a team and we're going to put them together. It's like the Avengers of D&D, basically, writing.
However, in recent years, it's kind of dwindled because I think their team is getting smaller and smaller.
They're focusing on video games. Yeah. Honestly, I would not be surprised that within the next 10 years, Wizards of the Coast and D&D is going to be almost entirely computer-based. Like, you'll still be doing role-playing, but they're going to want to encourage people to role-play with a computer system or a gaming system.
Yeah, well, Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah. Yeah, oh yeah. Well, no, I mean, there's a bunch of other games that they've released already.
Oh, yeah.
And the CEO of Wizards is like, we're actually going to be moving towards video games. So, I don't want to date us too much, but...
Yeah, which is also weird, because they're also coming out with 5th edition, or
5.5.
5.5.
Yeah.
Where they're going to, like, put everything on one book, or, like, a handful of books instead of 20 plus.
So we just took the timelessness of this episode and threw it in the trash.
That's where it belongs.
This episode belongs in the trash?
Dang!
No, just me.
No, alright. So we've talked a little bit about modules. We talked about a little bit about campaigns. We kind of know what they are. Really, one of the things that's important is kind of picking the right module for your players. So, okay, for instance...
I
think
the opposite. I feel you should pick the correct module for yourself.
That's what I'm kind of saying, is for the experience. So, like, for instance, everybody wants to play a vampire game, right?
Okay.
Curse of Strahd is what you want to do. You don't want to be doing something like Candlekeep.
I don't know what Candle Keep is, but one thing that I do is I'll read a campaign and I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna adapt this. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna have, Griswold and, Friendstein. No. Fuck them. I don't like them. I'm gonna have my own fucking people. They gonna be in it. It's gonna be, Lore. He's gonna be the fucking gatekeeper. He's gonna be a dwarf. And he's gonna talk like this. So every time someone comes up to him, he's gonna say, "Hey laddie, you're gonna come to me gate?" I don't think so. You know what I'm saying?
But that's a lot more freeform. So that's actually our next topic is freeform writing, built and the different kind of levels you can do that with, because you can
base it off of a published module.
So that's like level 1, where you take something that's already created for you, all the work is done for you, and you make it yours. I mean, on every level of DMing, you do that anyway. You're always going to make your game your game. You know what I'm saying? Hundreds of people, thousands of people play Curse of Strahd. I guarantee you none of them have had the same exact experience.
Correct. I was literally playing 2 Curse of Strahd games at the same time.
You know what? Before you say something, Laura, I'm just going to tell you that you're just going to prove my rule right
he's
by
chomping
telling
at
me
the
the
bits.
exception. He's going to be like, the exception
he's chomping at the
proves
bits.
the rule. Yeah, he's chomping at the bits.
Professor.
All right,
Professor.
Just so you know.
I'm going to move to the
The
right.
exception proves the rule. Now say what you got to say.
I'm going to move to the right because Laura about to explode, y'all.
For the first time ever.
He got something to say. Go ahead.
Every single campaign of Curse of Strahd that I've run, they have fucking killed the priest's son in front of the dad. Every single time.
Hey, I tried to be their friends. Remember?
We didn't.
No, and then someone went back and killed him.
Because we tried to kill the priest.
Yeah. But
not the priest's son.
No. But literally. Okay, except for maybe one time. I've run it at least 10 times. Maybe more.
I was so close to becoming a friend of that vampire. And then everyone's like, he's a vampire! And he's like, fuck. I kill everybody. I was like, he was going to be my friend. My character was so sad. So sad. It was like, but that was my friend.
Oh, by the way, spoiler alerts! Anyways.
That's true. Spoiler alert.
From a campaign written like 2015.
It don't matter. They don't know when we gonna listen to this. I just said this now. I didn't say this in 2015. I said this in 2021.
And now you dated the episode again.
That's the first time. Seriously, this year is the first time I've played Curse of Strahd. And I've played two campaigns at the same time. 2 campaigns at the same time.
So, but yeah, there's always going to be exceptions that prove the rule. But the truth is that I'm talking about the overall campaign. I'm sure that different choices were made during your campaign. So let's talk about those levels of writing. So we got level 1 where you take something and you kind of make it your own. But
actually, I would say level 1 is you take it and you run it verbatim. Like, you do not deviate.
No, he said writing.
Writing.
He said writing.
Not running. Writing. So we're talking about, basically, this is story writing 101. So, actually, kind of the first thing I want to talk about goes right down to the roots of RPGs. Joseph Campbell wrote a book called The Hero of a Thousand Faces. And what he was is he was sort of like a psychologist, sociologist, that he studied stories from all over the world. And essentially, almost every single story has the same composition, the same sort of cycle.
Yep.
And he calls this the hero's journey. In fact, one of the earliest cases of this is from the Sumerian story of Gilgamesh. And he follows the hero story. Hercules, same thing. This story it relates to the Jungian philosophy of an overmind. Another psychologist who was very famous, Jung. But my point is that with characters and story writing, one of the best examples of modern day hero's journey is actually the first Star Wars.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like Luke Skywalker. That's like the best
and the
stereotypical example of the hero's journey.
And the reason why it works so well is because, because Luke is a blank slate in that movie. You can identify and relate with him very easily. And my point in writing here is, as the DM, as the writer of this story, you kind of want to do that because you don't know, you can't predict exactly what your players are going to do.
Yeah.
You need your players to be able to identify with your story, and you need kind of a blank space for any hero or villain to fill in to your story.
Yeah.
So, and that's actually one of the challenging things, one of the big differences between writing a book and writing a game. Because in a book, you have total control. In fact, in a book, you're the writer, you're the director, you're everything. But when you're the DM, you're just the director. You set up the settings, you set up all the people.
You're not even the
setting.
director, you're 50% director.
The players do all the writing for you. They write the dialogue. So you're exactly right. They also kind of direct where the next scene is going to go, and you're like the scene builder as the DM.
Yeah.
Like, just imagine a play where they have to build the scene in the background as the actors are on stage acting things out. And they're like, we're going to go to the mall. And then the people behind the curtain are building a mall in the background with all the people in the mall and all the stalls. Yes, that's
you see Barnes and Nobles. What do you do? I'm going to go get some coffee. So
there's only a Jamba Juice.
They're out of coffee. And then the bistro says, would you like a milkshake?
I want to talk to the manager. Oh man, I gotta make a manager now.
Yeah, but like you said, there's always an exception to the rule. Where your games, you can predict everything because you fuck with everyone's heads, so you make them do what you want.
False.
So it is false. See, D20's right. What I use, and we'll talk about this later, is I use little psychological tricks that I've learned on how to
manipulate
the story. Where I'll leave little story hooks that don't always get picked up.
Yeah.
But when they get picked up, I can use them, and it seems like they've been there the whole time.
One thing that I do, that I really like to do, is I do not clearly define who the good guys and the bad guys are in my stories. You know what I'm saying? So it's 100% up to the players to what they do, and their actions affect the story. You know what I'm saying? I think that's cool. That probably makes my characters want to murder me. But I mean, like, to me, it's just like, you know, you go to a new school, you don't know who the friendly kids are. You don't know who the assholes are. You know what I'm saying? You're going to talk to both of them and feel each other out. You might befriend the assholes. Yep. You know what I'm saying? You might befriend the nice kids, and then they turn out to be devious. And so you just don't know. So I like that. I like doing that.
Yeah, and you know, that actually brings us to the next thing we're going to talk about. Is actually story arcs.
I'm good at that.
Like we're kind of sliding right into these story arcs.
Sliding scale.
So a story arc has a bunch of components to it. You have the
Hold up. Let's rewind. We've been blowing through these things. What is a story arc?
You're right. So a story arc is essentially, it's kind of what most people refer to as a plot.
Okay.
All right? And they call it an arc for a reason, because you start at the beginning with the exposition. Okay, it's 20XX and robots have taken over the world. And you know what? That's exposition. It's telling you what you need to know to get into the story. Right?
I'm in this story.
High school English all over again. I'm going to go over the corner and take a nap. No.
That's why they call me the professor. No, all right. So, and really what you're doing is you're inciting incident. You're creating, you know, there's something that is happening that starts your story.
Okay.
All right. That's where you always want to begin because that's how humans process things. All right. The Quentin Tarantino starting at the end and going, all that is just really artsy fartsy stuff.
You see my face? Character seats. You see my face? Okay.
You can hear his face.
Okay.
So like that, like you can go that way, but it's a gimmick.
No, don't go that way. It's a fucking RPG.
You
ain't trying to. And you're like, wait a minute. I mean, why are you gonna kill the end boss at day 1 and then day 2 you're questing to go to the end boss? You already killed the motherfucker. I mean, what are you doing?
Yeah, it really doesn't work. I mean, I've written stories where I've done it that way, and it wasn't as good. It just really wasn't as good. But anyway, so basically you have that incident. You have the inciting incident. And that's when you get to that rising action. So what that means
was you because I call it the catalyst.
I mean, there's different words that you
I mean, I'm just saying, like, would you also call it the catalyst?
It could be, yeah, it's something that starts everything. It makes everything happen. Okay. And then the next part of that, it's like a bell curve. Because you're going up this curve, and that's the rising action. This is why they call it an arc, because it's actually, basically, the story's getting more interesting.
Yeah, rising action.
The plot thickens, that kind of stuff, right? So, and that leads up to a climax, and not that kind of climax, and then the falling action. So what the climax is that's defeating the boss.
The climax, that's not defeating the boss. The climax is when the characters get to a point where they change from the beginning. They permanently change from the catalyst to this point on.
That is actually called a character arc, and that's different. So,
I fuck you that.
A plot arc is they are in the room with the boss. And
so think of it this way: exposition is setting up the goal.
Mm-hmm.
The climax is achieving the goal because. After the climax, you have the falling action.
And that's the result.
Like look at Mega Man. After you beat Wily, what do you got to do?
Nothing, because the credits roll.
No, you got to escape his castle.
That's Metroid.
No. So in some of the Mega Man games, after you defeat Wily, you have to get out of the castle as it's exploding, and you have a certain amount of time to get out. And there's actually in the last one, he's holding up the whole castle. Mega Man is holding up the whole castle with his gears. Yeah. So, like, that's...
Okay.
So, that is called the falling action. It's action that is sort of resolving the climax. Okay. Right? It's giving you closure on the climax. And which leaves to the last thing. It's called the denouement. The denouement, yeah, it's a French word.
The denouement.
Denouement. And so, what that is that's the post-credit scene where you see Mega Man walking through the different seasons.
Okay.
In Mega Man 2, you remember?
Yeah.
And he's walking through the different seasons.
Yeah.
That's called the denouement. It's like this little tail bit of storyline that kind of gives you the what happened, the happily ever after. That is a very, very primitive denouement.
Okay.
They lived happily ever after. All right. So another example of it would be like, okay, you went to the volcano to beat the dragon. You beat the dragon, and now you had to escape the volcano before it blows up, and then the journey back home. In Lord of the Rings, after they melt the ring, which is technically the climax, they get saved by the eagles, which is the falling action, right? Mm-hmm. And then the denouement is the 13 ending scenes that they had at the end of the movie, and where like people are leaving to go to the new world. The elves were leaving and all that stuff. That's technically a denouement.
Okay.
Or like at the end of the Avengers, where they're sitting in the shawarma shop and eating a shawarma.
Yes, and credit scenes are a good example of a denouement.
Okay.
So that's what a story arc is. Is basically it's a plot, and it has almost all story arcs have that.
Almost?
Well, Kill Bill. Kill Bill Part 1 and 2, even though that's technically a full story arc, those two separate movies don't have full story arcs in them because one goes right up just before the climax, and then the second movie pretty much starts at the climax, and then you have the falling action. You think Kill Bill would be the climax, and it's not. Killing Bill was part of the falling action, and the rest of the movie is a denouement. It's basically showing what happened after.
So what's the climax then?
The climax was, so it's a weird story because it's about character growth. So the beginning of the story, like,
and we this is about RPGs and saying about movies.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
that's a different podcast.
Right. So, anyway, so really, what a story arc does is you're kind of injecting your players into your characters into the story. Once you know who your players are, once you know who your characters are, remember we talked about that sort of blank spot, right?
Yep.
So at this point, you want to put your characters into that blank spot in your story, and that's how you do it with the story arc, is with the exposition. You basically, you take your exposition and you're like, so, what are you doing? All right, good example. The kingdom has been under attack by a mysterious force.
The Ginyu Force?
Maybe.
Oh no, not the Ginyu Force.
And you find yourself in a bar. I hate opening up with bars, but I'm just going to do it right now. You find yourself in a pub. And you see various strangers around the pub. What are you doing? D20.
You see a small child with a tiara and a long flowing dress.
I'm Princess Mouse!
She's known to the kingdom.
It's Princess Mouse! And I like root beer! And this is the only place they give it to me!
And Lore, what are you doing?
Killing you for murdering. The actual thing was you meet in a tavern.
I hate meeting in a tavern. I can't even say it.
You just said it.
Damn it.
You're the one that wrote it down too.
No, I hate it. That is the worst trope opening up any game. Is
you know what? I actually refuse to start a game in a tavern. What I like to do is have like a public meeting or be in temple on temple day. You know, so it's like, where would everyone in the small village be at the same time to get large amounts of information from superiors?
Yeah, a temple where they have a bar and they serve alcohol.
No,
not a dwarven temple. No, like, I actually like having people meet up on a road. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is because people who aren't from that town now have a reason to be going into that town because they're just traveling. And the people who live in that town, you know, don't necessarily need to be in the town all the time. Sometimes they went to go fish in the pond that's nearby. There's 1,000 different reasons you can come up with. And it's an interesting dynamic to kind of bring characters together. It's like, oh, we're walking towards the same place and we're all kind of walking at the same speed. So what do? How do you break the ice with other people?
Yeah.
Which actually is an important thing. Something I think we need to talk about is how do you break the ice? Because
you wake up in a cart, your hands are bound.
So
we're doing that story?
Skyrim?
Oh, I didn't think that's what we were talking about.
No.
The word rim is in the story. But
when you're writing, you can't just write a story. You have to have motivations, and you have to encourage role playing, and that's kind of what I was just about to talk about, is like breaking that ice. Because you're going to sit down at that table, and if you're with new players or people who never met with each other, they're not going to make silly voices like we just did. They're not gonna role play. They're just going to sit there on their phones, or staring at the table, and they're not going to do anything. So, as the DM, as the GM, you got to break that ice. You got to be the one that uses the silly voices.
I would like to interject something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, as players, you can take advantage of that too. This is my thing. Especially if you're at a one-shot.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know these people. There is a 98% chance you are never going to see these people again. Have fun. Have fun with it. Be silly. Be extra. You know what I'm saying? Because then you're going to be like, you know, I actually like doing this. You know? I actually like being Princess Mars, or I like being Laura and so mysterious. I mean, you know, it makes the game more fun. And at least it does to me. You know what I'm saying? And if you forget all your voices, what the fuck ever. Make a new voice, you know. Princess Mars! It's now Princess Mars. You know what I'm saying? And it's just, you just roll with it because it's fun. It makes you laugh. But if you're so, and I'm not, and I'm going to say this out loud. If your shyness gets a hold of you and keeps you from enjoying the game, it's going to keep you from enjoying the game. And enjoying the game is the most important part of role-playing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I 100% encourage what you're saying. But that's for the players podcast that we haven't done yet.
Yes, and I did start off with saying the players.
Yeah, so as the DM, most likely your players aren't going to know how to do that.
Agreed.
And so that's why, especially if it's new players. If you're working with veteran players, honestly, I highly recommend having at least one veteran player at your table.
I know, but that's me.
I know, and the reason why is because a veteran player, and I don't mean someone who's played D&D before. I mean a veteran player. Somebody who knows how to role play.
Yeah.
All right, there's a difference. There's a big difference. Because players, they munchkin, they're gonna, you know, which is basically min-maxing your character to be invincible. Some people call it Mary suing, things like. You've got all these different tropes that are going to be happening. But having a veteran player who knows how to roleplay, who knows how to support a DM and help write a story, because remember, they're 50% the writers of this story.
Correct.
At least.
Mm-hmm.
So if they know how to do that, if they know how to write the story with you, that is called a veteran player, at least in my definition. And so I really recommend having one because they're going to help you with motivation.
I mean, that's how I created Saul Cloakfin, is because you were at my table.
If you remember in previous episodes, yeah, you're right. If you remember previous episodes, we talked about intrinsic and extrinsic motivations, right? Your veteran players are going to have that self-driving intrinsic motivation. They're going to have that motivation that they're going to be like, well, I don't care what the story is right now. I want to get the Vorpal sword, right? Snicker snack.
But see, to me, that's bullshit. Cause you don't fucking know what a sticker sword is. You don't know what that is.
Well, I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm saying if their character did know about that, that's like their character's personal mission.
I get what you're saying.
Get
I get what you're saying. Sword. But I feel a good veteran player